Hey guys, welcome Musky Road Rules Podcast and Patreon. Guys, thanks for tuning in every week and also for becoming a member of the Patreon channel. You know, the Patreon deal is pretty simple to do. I've heard guys say, oh, I don't know how to do this. I don't know where to find it. Easy. Go to patreon.com. And to become a member, it only costs $8. $8 a month. You can get a member. You're going to get 4 videos a month. As long as a few bonus stuff, I'm working on things now. I know you're saying, well, Greg, you've been saying that for a while. Well, sometimes it takes a little while. And plus, I'm in the middle of fishing season. And, you know, I'm just trying to deliver everything I can to you guys. And so far, we've gotten a lot of good reviews on what we're doing. So check it out, patreon.com, search Musky Road Rules and hit become a member. And you will be signed up and you'll get every video that we've done for the last since January 1st. So it's a pretty cool deal. So guys, right now we're in June. It's warming up. We got spring. Musky season is open pretty much everywhere. I don't know if this will be out before the Ontario opener or not, but it's pretty much open everywhere. And this week's podcast, I got a buddy of mine from up in Minnesota, Mr. Kevin Cochran. I'll bring Kevin up here. There you are. We're going to be talking some spring muskies.
So I fish
in
Bemidji,
kind of the area
Cass
that
Lake
Kevin's
area.
fishing.
We've
Kevin,
got
where
a
are you
lot of
mainly
lakes
targeting
in
right
that-
now?
in the immediate area. Then I do travel and fish some of the smaller lakes within an hour of where I'm at. So I've got a little bit of a range, maybe a 60-mile radius that I fish. And we just have a ton of lakes up here.
Yeah, that's the one thing. You know, people get lost on like Cass because it's so big, and then you know, Bemidji's very popular. But there's a shitload of lakes right there. I mean, there's anything from you know, 400 or 500 acres all the way up to if you count Leech, 100,000 acres. And all those big bodies of water and all those even those small bodies of water. We got springtime. It's coming on. And water temps.
We'll have
what is
anywhere
your normal
from
water temps in the spring when you get
to
going?
maybe 61-ish, something right around there, 62.
Okay. So the fish are probably just coming off spawn or have been off spawn for a little bit. Now, the fish that you're finding, are these fish, the springtime people, a traditionalist would say are very lethargic fish. So
Yeah,
you
I
struggle
don't
to
see
get the
that.
bite. Is that what you're
I
finding, or
just
are
think
you
that it's
getting
all
into
about
pretty
putting a
aggressive
bait in
fish?
front of as many fish as you possibly can. You know, kind of dissecting the lakes a little bit. A lot of the larger lakes, I like colder springs because the larger lakes will kick out um, big fish, immediate post spawn females up super shallow. And I love like burning bucktails the first week of June. I love fishing really shallow, burning bucktails,
Hmm.
and kind of running that gamut. Uh, you know, um, and then the smaller lakes, I think they're already like well past spawn, and those fish are already in that open water area. But I mean, regardless, the fish are active and they're bitey, and some days we're getting 4 to 8 fish a day. And then also, I think like it's really important to remember that these fish haven't seen bait since, with any consistency, maybe since like September. Mhm.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, they're
Mhm.
definitely for lack of a better term, dumber, which is nice. And so let's talk about that. A cold spring on the big bodies of water. That's something that you still hear guys talk about on Mille Lacs. They in the spring they'll see,
Hmm.
and it's kind of when you get that rumor of, oh my God, Mille Lacs is just it's back. There's just loaded with fish and they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And I go,
Yeah.
no, let's just
Yeah.
about every one of them is
Mhm.
probably in 100 acres,
No.
and
No.
once they go out and spread out, it's like, oh boy, there ain't many of them left. So, and is that what you're finding in some of the bigger lakes by you, like your leeches, your casses, stuff like that? Those fish, And a Lake
Without a
Spring, we're
doubt.
still
Yeah,
up there
yeah, without
shallow,
a
and you
doubt.
kind of
We're
get a real
seeing we're
sense of,
seeing those,
holy shit, that's a
the
big one.
colder it is.
Yeah.
I like it, the colder it is. The water temps where it's like mid-50s, those are just killer early season casting shallow water bites. Specifically on the big lakes, and I think like the warmer lakes, they're already too far gone past spawn, so those fish have moved out. But but we are seeing numbers of fish in that immediate post spawn area. And some of the bigger lakes, what I like to look at is those immediate post spawn areas are essentially like the weeds right off of the spawning ground. So um, if you're looking specifically, let's take my lake that I live on here, for example. So I live on Lake Irving, which is connected to Bemidji. A lot of fish spawn up here. So, like this area during a cold spring, I don't think necessarily this year, but a cold spring, there's still a lot of fish up the river, up the Mississippi, and some of these connected waters. And I see that scenario play out for like Cass and for even like Big Lake up by me. So I see a lot of those immediate post spawn fish in that shallow water areas during cold years,
Hmm.
and that's a lot of fun. I mean, it really is. I mean, you're essentially like summer fishing, or maybe even with that like September mindset where you're just burning bucktails as fast as you can. And the fish are dumb. They're in shallow bays. They're pretty dumb, and you're just covering water. And
Hmm.
and in that regard, you can connect with quite a few fish in a day. Mhm.
So let's talk about on a bigger lake. So say Leech or Cass, for instance, a lake that's, Cass 25,000 acres, 26,000, whatever it is, it's big. Um, on those type lakes, are you
Yeah.
looking on main body, or are
Yeah,
you starting to
everything
look like in like the
upstream.
little
So
fingers,
everything
like in
upstream,
Bruja and
I just go
Pitchy
to
and
where I
stuff like
find the
that?
warmest water, really, and that's kind of what it is. Um, and I think so many of those main lake fish, they go upriver and spawn in pretty much every large lake system around this area. They'll go upriver,
Hmm.
um, and whether it's like to the north or to the west or wherever, and that's where these fish are spawning. So they're trying to find usually the warmest, dingiest, dirtiest water is where they're at. Mhm.
Yeah, that's that's I was always curious about that, in the early spring and on those lakes. Especially, like I said, the one thing I always heard about was Mille
Mhm.
Lacs, and I'm sure you hear about it in other Leech, I'm sure has the same thing, and Cass, and
Mhm.
even I've never fished it, but I'm sure Winnie has the same thing as well. You get that going on. So, but let's talk about now, if you're fishing, if you go out and on a
Yeah.
normal spring, what is your I know you brought some baits. What is some
Okay,
of the
so I think
stuff
like
that you're
first and
looking to
foremost, the most important
do,
thing is
and
just
how are you
finding out where the
attacking the
fish are at.
fish?
Okay, if they're up shallow, then my attack is definitely like bucktails and musky frenzies, rabbit, squirrels, little lunging baits, something that's small that I can burn pretty quick and just cover as much water as possible. If those fish have exited those spawning grounds, then I look for the closest deep water adjacent to those spawning grounds. So that's kind of their next step on that phase, is they're going to be in that open water. If they are, plastic. I'm just throwing a lot of plastic, a lot of. Did you want me to start busting any baits out here, or okay? So I think like first and foremost, if I'm
Sure,
looking
sure.
at
Let's
like
start
open
looking at
water
them. Let me
fish,
bring you here.
baits that I can drop on fish. For example, this is a Red October tube, and it's a 10 inch. I use a lot of tens.
Is that
I
is
don't
that a
go
10
super
or a
big,
12?
but one thing that I do
Okay.
is I either
Yep.
do one of two things on this tube. I shrink tube this keeper right here, this hook, so it's out. So or I'll actually remove this
Hmm.
hook and I'll put a piece of wire right here, maybe a 1.5 inch to 2 inch piece of wire above the tube, and then I'll put my smaller hooks, say like a 5/0 mustad. And I do that for one of two reasons. Just actually, actually the biggest reason, the only reason really, is to make sure that the fish doesn't choke on this bait. So I think delayed mortality when guys are fishing open water is a huge issue up by me,
Mm-hmm.
and not even delayed. It's we've had quite a few. In all honesty, in full transparency here, we do get fish that swallow baits, that lodge these baits into their gill arches, and they're just a bloody mess when they get in the boat. So I think taking every precaution, and either like shrink tubing this harness or this hook keeper and this eyelet here so it's stationary, it doesn't move much, or removing that hook in its entirety and putting it 2 inches above the bait. That's essential. I mean, to be completely honest, I feel like I had more than an acceptable number of fish that had died in my boat last year. We were coming in contact with a ton of fish. And we did kill quite a few, in my opinion, quite a few. Um, and yeah, yeah, it was.
From being
Yeah,
hooked too deep, you think? So they were just head hunting and getting hooked way back in the fish's gills. And I remember that
yeah, yeah,
when we were on Mille Lacs at night with the
yeah,
cowgirls when they first came out. I mean, it was like, holy crap, where is the bait? And they would just suck them in. And the one good thing I will say that came from that, well, not a lot of good things came from that, but the toothpick extractor that
yeah.
it was originally made. I can't remember the guy's
Mhm,
name. It was one of
mhm, mhm.
Hammerdick's buddies made it, and then now Betty is doing it. John Betty from Stealth Tackle, and it's just a neat little tool
Mhm,
that you can actually push back on the bait inside its mouth and then
mhm.
pop the hook
And,
out.
and
I
and
think
let me
things like that are
piggyback off
really
of that
crucial
too. Is
too.
I think another thing that's
On
really
that
important
bait
is
there,
pinching the
go ahead.
barb on that front treble hook too. That's pretty important. I think if you're going to leave a hook like this on the bait suspended under the bait like this, you should probably pinch the barbs. This is going to be easier to remove. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Why?
it's
Let
kind
me
of
ask you
a
this.
like
Why have you got
a hillbilly
the
idea
zip
of
tie?
just like keeping the tube on this rig itself. This is actually an old jig head. This is a really old red October jig head. I would say this is probably going back maybe, man, 2008, 2009, something like that.
So is that one that has the actual?
Right.
It
So
looks
yeah,
like to
this is
me
wire.
that
You can
that
kind of
doesn't
see
have
that.
the hook eye on the
I just
jig
like
head. You
looped
actually
wire
put a wire
around,
on
and I
there.
made this
Yeah.
this little quick harness to have that drop hook right here.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
this might even be 3 ounce. But I put this on here to just kind of keep everything together. And once I start catching so
Hmm.
many fish on these baits, they just get shredded. And if you do um, a zip tie, the longevity of the actual rubber lasts a long time. So I can get maybe I can get like good.
One thing that I've Yeah, one thing I've found with tubes that I started doing, and it actually has been
Hmm.
working, is getting like saltwater plastisol. You can order it on Amazon, and it's really, really tough. And you just heat it up, and
Hmm.
then whenever your
Hmm.
tube or something gets all gnarly, you
Oh
can take
wow.
it and re-dip it just quick, and it actually reseals the whole bait. And
Yeah,
it's a little
yeah, yeah.
tougher. Don't touch the tentacles with it because you don't want them to move. You want them to be wiggly and all that. But if you just
Hmm.
rejig, melt it back the best you can with a lighter and whatever you got, and then take that
Hmm.
plastisol and just do a quick
Nice.
dip. In 10 minutes, it
Yeah.
reseals everything, and it's like a new tube. And it's clear. You
Hmm.
don't put any coloring in it. It's all just clear
Yeah, yeah.
bullshit
I do
that
the
you don't have to
blade.
worry about.
I've always done
I
the
seen on
blade.
that too. You're putting a
Big
blade on
blade
the
guy.
back.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm a big Yeah, I'm a big fan of the blades sticking out the back like that. I like everything from I've caught them on everything from willow to
Hmm.
Colorado to you name it, and they seem to work really
Okay.
nice. And
Wow. Interesting.
and I've caught quite a few with just grubs
Yeah.
hanging back there as well. Putting a Magombo grub back there. Anything, I think with tubes, especially early on, missing fish with them was a big thing. Losing fish with them. And I always thought, like with a tube, and I've talked about this with Mark and them, there's no, like with a dog or a Medusa or any of a tail bait,
Sure.
there's no way to slow it down. As a tail bait goes through the water, it slows down. There's like when you quit pulling it, it's got like a parachute.
It darts everywhere.
A tube being round, that baby just flies through the water. And I think a lot of times, yeah, and I think there's a lot of times that the fish hit the damn thing and you don't even know it. And by the time you realize it and set the hook, they're already spitting it. And I think that's one of the reasons why we have or they hit it moving forward and you can't catch up to them. So I think the blades,
yeah, and I will say too,
any of that stuff
I
coming
really
out
like
the butt of
a
those deals
15-inch
really help
wire
with
leader.
hookups.
A braided stealth, a long braided stealth leader with those, because I have seen fish in my boat like overshoot a tube and they get the line. Not necessarily the bait's not in their mouth, but they overshoot it and they cut the line. So that's happened a few times as well. And yeah, my next bait here is an Orba.
Come back.
And I can kind of show you the setup on that. I'm sure. No, so that's just
is that a fast
yeah, piece of wire, maybe an inch and a half long, and then I connected
just
that
a piece
to
of
the
wire.
end
Okay.
of the stealth wire leader here, and also on that loop end is I think that's like a BMC 5/0, something like that. So what this does is, obviously you're not gonna. This is not like a pull, pause, retrieve type setup. This is just a straight steady or a straight steady retrieval. And what you're going to do is just cast it out, reel it in slow, and a lot of times these fish just inhale them. I haven't really noticed the difference between moving it like pulling an Orba. So I just kind of do this kind of steady retrieve setup. One thing that this does when fish inhale this bait, it's gonna put this hook on either the outside of their mouth or barely on the inside of their jaw. So it keeps it out of the gill arches, their gills, their tongue, their throats. I think like just delayed mortality and mortality in general is going to be a huge issue if people aren't modifying baits. And this is a prime example of an awesome modification, in my opinion, for an Orba, putting it ahead of the bait. The fish is definitely still going to get hooked. It's just going to put the head of this bait that's going to end up towards, the back of the fish's mouth. It's going to put that. Fine. If it goes towards the back of their mouth, that's fine. This hook is going to get hung up on usually the outside of their mouth, and it gets buried. So we don't have any issues with losing fish at all on this setup. You can see I did shrink tube this as well on the back. The rear hook is never really an issue. And I think only one time this year I had an issue, and a fish did bleed a little bit from this past year from a shrink tube back hook, but I double split ring this to make it a little bit longer, and then it works great. I mean, this setup itself works awesome.
Yeah. The back, I like those Orbas. The only problem I've ever had with them is that stupid tail breaking off. It isn't, for whatever reason, that tail is not hooked very well back there. And I've got several Orba dildos, I guess, with no tail, just a big tube of rubber. But no, they do look great in the water. And the other thing about that Orba, I mean, you can fish it deep, but also if you want to reel fast, you can fish that thing in 2 feet of water.
Mhm.
and that's the thing with it. But
So,
I like the
yeah, I actually went and
modifications.
got 2 more baits, and then
What was the
besides
other? You
these
went and
2, I
got
wanted to
another
talk
bait before
briefly
we
about one
started.
more
What?
bait that, um, I was supposed to get today, and it never arrived, but that would let me, just get that one off my chest right away. That's a Zilla bait gladiator, and that's essentially that's what that is that's a hard body Orba type bait. Yeah, yeah,
I've seen those. Yeah,
yeah, right, same.
the kid that made
Yeah, I'm
those, or
old man.
guy. I don't know. I call everybody kid. I'm getting
Are you
old.
what are you,
Kevin,
48?
we're getting old. Um,
46. Okay.
old man.
I'm 46. Yeah.
46.
46, yeah.
Yeah.
Old.
You're 46 too? Oh, Jesus. See, old.
Mhm.
The I talked to that guy at Milwaukee or maybe Chicago,
I
one
have,
of the
yeah,
Musky
yeah.
shows,
I
and
mean,
he had
it's
that
awesome.
bait there, and it
It's
was a pretty cool
essentially
looking bait. Have
taking
you
the
thrown it
design of
or?
an Orba, and
Yeah,
in my opinion, fixing some of what I'm running into with um, these baits getting jammed in the back of the fish's throats, right? So if you have a hard body bait up front, it's not going to get jammed in the fish's throat. It's going to be
sure.
a safe bait to use. And then also like you look at longevity too. The hard body up front, the thing's gonna last a long time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's they're cool
Mhm.
looking deals there. Let's
Okay.
before we get into those other baits here, why don't we look at it? You sent me some nice pictures of some no, hold on. That was the wrong button. Still learning. But like
So
this fish here,
that
you've
was a
got
tournament fish
why is it's got a
that yeah, I think
2024?
we got 5 fish that day fishing the tournament. The
Okay.
Mickey Cass Lake Musky Inc. tournament last year, and that's Jody from Fish Camp Creative. So I just let him pull the trigger on all the fish, and I think we were 5 for 10 that day. But yeah, that was I think that was the biggest one. I don't know, maybe a 47, 40,
Oh, jeez.
46, maybe something like that. But yeah, that was a
Hmm.
tube, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was this fish on? A tube. Okay. And then we got
hmm
man,
hmm
some really now you can see this fish definitely
hmm
spring. You can see some of the
So
spawning
that was
scars
an
on
open
it.
water casting fish. I
Super
believe we
calm
caught that on a
day.
beaver
What's the
last
deal with this
year.
guy?
Um, and that again was a deep water basin just outside of a spawning ground. So the first immediate deep water off of a sand flat, and that's where a lot of these fish go to recuperate after the spawn. hmm
Yeah, they're chilling out
I
out there.
am, yeah.
Are you
So
finding a lot of these
a lot
fish
of the fish that I
high in
see
the
in
column
June,
for the most part?
they're specifically June itself. These fish are really transient. They move around a lot. They're swimming and they're not really stationary. So they're constantly moving, and you know one day I'll find them in this basin, and then the next day I'll travel half a mile away, and they'll be in this basin. And when they're traveling like that, I find that they're really high up in the water column. Mhm. 10 feet. 10, I mean,
Sure.
they could
No,
be
that's I
5
mean, when
feet
you say
down
high,
to
what
10
are we
feet down.
talking? 10 feet,
So
20, 10
I do
feet?
see some fish deeper when the water temps get warmer, maybe
Oh,
in
wow.
July and August and stuff. But for the most part, June, these fish are definitely they're transient open water fish that
Mhm.
are,
Mhm.
just out there cruising. hmm
Yep, swimming around.
Yeah,
Now this right
it
here looks
is. And
like
what
to
you see
me,
with like
looking
a
at this
Cass Lake
fish,
fish,
this
the
is
older
looks like a
fish,
Cass Lake
super
fish. Am I
spot,
right or no?
big head. It's an old fish. The genetics on natural fish aren't as robust, if you will, as a stockfish. So they don't carry the weight like a stockfish do. So let's say
Mhm.
gorgeous, gorgeous. Yeah.
It is a pretty it's got a real pretty spot and
hmm
stuff, and that's the one thing I've always noticed about Cass Lake fish is they have just tons of spots, really
hmm
pretty
hmm
fish, long, not necessarily the fattest ones.
He's
this
got to
this
be,
gentleman here
yeah,
with
he
you,
might be
he
like a few years
how
older than
old is
that
he?
fish,
He looks like he's a
but
little
he's
older.
pushing maybe, I don't know, mid 70s, possibly.
Yeah.
So yeah, the guy could have maybe helped him. I cast it for him, to be honest with you,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then I'm like, all right, well there you go, and then you just reel it in, and that's kind of what we did. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, part of the game, man. Yeah, you got to get him a bite
Hey,
regardless
that's
of
part of the game
physical
sometimes, I
abilities, and sometimes
understand.
you got to be the one that
Yeah.
casts. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a dandy of
Yeah,
a
it's his boy.
fish.
Yeah, that's
Now this
Nick and
guy
his
here, we
son,
got a guy and his
and that's
looks like
it's
his
actually
little is that his
a
little boy or
not a long fish by any means, but it was really stocky, just a really nice heavy fish that we caught. Yeah,
looks like kind of a shitty day there, kind of windy and stuff. Have you noticed
sure.
in the spring,
So
is there
I would
like a day
say,
you look for calm,
specifically, I mean,
windy
really doesn't
or
matter in
anything?
most bodies of water. However, if you're finding, if you're fishing lakes that are pretty pressured, then days like this, and then also days that are just nighttime in general, from 9 p.m. to 2 in the morning
Mhm.
on pressure lakes, fishing in June. But lakes that don't have a lot of open water
Mhm.
pressure, then I still think that anything goes. You could be out there at 6 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon, and still put a hurting on them. Mm,
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's sunny, cloudy,
mm,
whatever, those fish don't really have a preference on that. I do believe that, I believe
hmm.
that too.
Yeah.
Here looks like a nice day, kinda calm, nice
So
spring
tubes,
day and stuff. Are
orbas,
most of these
and
fish
beaver
tube
fish.
fish or
I've got a beaver
orbas?
right here too that I didn't bust out yet, but um, this is a beaver, just kind of a classic. This is an old school hair
Yeah, let's
beaver,
see the beaver
black and
here.
orange. It's got a heavy weight on the front, and sometimes I'll actually add a little bit of weight on the top too. But I'll always put a hook. I think that's a 5/0 Mustad 3551 hanging off the nose of this thing, and I think that's kind of essential as well.
Mhm.
Again, yeah,
Why do you think that is with the beavers? I've seen a lot of guys do that.
we do, yeah. So
What's the deal with
when they're
the
biting
do you
that
get a
bait,
lot of
they're
head
coming
hunt
across
fish?
like this, and then you have a, I think that's a 7/0 3551 mustad right here, and you can tell there's a little bit of room here. Big fish doesn't really matter. You know, some smaller fish,
Mhm.
maybe like the 43s and under, you don't you might miss some fish, but just I always like putting a hook up here. It works out really well, and if anything, I mean, really, if you wanted to keep this hook out of like the gill flap or the eyes or the outside of their mouth, you can always just trim these barbs, cut the hook points off. I know this one's pinched all the way, but you could cut those hook points off and still have two really good hooking points up here. Now, yeah, and again, a hard-headed bait like this, you're not going to lodge it
Sure.
back in the fish's throat too often. I have seen some fish come unglued on beavers and swallow them pretty good, but for the most part, I think like this hard head prevents um, mortality. I think I got it from Brian, from the owner of
Where
the
did you get
beaver.
that big
Yeah,
weight for? That's a nice weight there.
it's heavy. Yeah, it's the heaviest I had. So
Okay.
yeah, I like it.
How heavy? It looks like a 2 ouncer or something. Yeah. No,
Hmm.
yeah, no, those are nice. I mean, it's hard to find a
Hmm.
really big weight like that, um, for the front of those dudes, or just any bait
Hmm.
in general. It's kind of a
Got
different
another bait right
deal.
here too.
Um,
We can take a look at this. This is
um,
it's different, right? So this is
Now that is something right there. What
it's
is
a
that?
horn tube, um, made by a guy up here named Tim, and um, it's a Suckhorn bait company, and I put a maybe a 4 or 5 3 5 5 1, and those
Okay.
that kind of the same principle as a beaver. I think that's pretty important. And then there's a 7/0 right here hanging off the belly. But this is going to drop. It's going to do a lot like a tube, except it does have a hard head, which is pretty sweet. It's got a rattle. You hear the rattle? Yeah.
You got a rattle?
And then it has a
Hmm.
maybe a 5 or 6
Yeah.
out the back with a willow blade. It's pretty cool. So again, like these baits, these hard-headed baits, you're usually you don't see a lot of mortality with these baits. So I think that's really important when you got guys that are fishing open water. That, I mean, let's face it, open water fish do have a tendency to inhale baits more so than shallow water fish. So you need every tool in your toolbox that's going to help keep these fish alive. So, suckhorn.
Okay, and that's
Yeah,
what it's called.
and
What that's called, a suck
it's a
harn?
harn tube. Suckhorn Bait Company, and it's called a harn tube. HARNTUBE. Harn tube. Yeah.
Well, there
So.
you go. Okay, nice.
It's got weight to it. It's got weight to it.
But yeah,
I'd
just a
say
big
there's like
profile. It's
just feeling
got,
it. I would say there's
and
probably
it looks,
there might be
yeah.
4 ounces in the head, 4 ounces of like body weight here. It'll get down.
Okay, so it'll get down. Yeah, well, that's a good deal. Looking back here, we'll go back to some of the images you got. Here's another nice. This is like late in the day. Have
Yeah.
you noticed
I
later in
just
the
drop on
day,
as many fish as I can,
early morning,
and
nothing, or does it
we
matter?
get bites kind of regardless, I think. But for the most part, when I'm fishing pressured lakes, like such as like Bemidji, Plantagenet, Big Lake, I wouldn't even think about going out during the day. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
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 that's a
it
like a typical
definitely,
cast
the night
laker,
thing gets
million
good. Now here looks like a
spots.
beautiful day. It's calm and
To be honest, I don't see a lot of real big fish out there. It's pretty rare. To give you an example, percentages of
mhm.
fish over 50, it's going to kind of blow your mind. Like, I think 5 to 7%. That's and that's a natural fishery. That's a natural fishery that isn't
Yeah.
Leech Lake. Leech Lake does pump out a lot of real big fish. Cass Lake, not necessarily. If I catch 100 fish out there,
Mhm.
there might be 5 to 6 50s. So I just don't see them. I see lots 46s to 48s,
Yeah.
49s, mixed in, but yeah.
Do you think they're just
Yeah, I
not
think
they're
I
aging
think
out
they
before
definitely
that? I
hit
mean,
a
they're just not
ceiling,
getting
and
that
then
big?
it's extremely rare to get anything over 50. They hit their growth is that, and then they just kind of stop growing. So, and even like this one too, you see it's a natural fish, got a million
Mhm.
spots, a lot of yellow in it. Um, it's just I I don't know. I see it more in natural fisheries than
What's that
stock.
yellow from? Do
On
you
some of the
know?
stock fisheries, I'll see big circles of yellow, but um, on
Mhm.
the natural fisheries, I see it like spread out through the whole entire pattern. But I'm not
Yep.
sure.
Yep.
Mhm.
Huh.
Yeah, and I think that
This
was an
one you
old
can
fish
see
too,
kinda too. It
and
almost
that
looks
was
like, is its
maybe only
eye
like a
cloud
mid
is it got a cloudy
40-ish,
eye or
but
is it?
we'll run into that genetics
Yeah.
where it puts those fish at, um, where they start having those characteristics of like cataracts. Of as crazy as it sounds, like I catch fish out there in generally all bodies of water that have missing teeth. You know, I I've heard of that old wives' tale that, hey, if a muskie gets this
Okay.
old, it loses teeth. Well, I've seen it. I've seen it personally, and on some of my lakes where they don't really have a lot of teeth.
Mhm. And
They can, yeah.
these natural fisheries, these fish can live a long time. I mean, I'm sure
Yeah, we
Cass
did
has got
a
fish that
study
are
out there.
probably
So
in
I
their
did kind of
early
a
20s,
comparison, a seminar
you know.
years ago that I had all my data from Cass, then I had all my data from Lake Bemidji, and that was also we had specific ages from our local DNR office on these fish, so I could take like a 14-year-old fish out of Cass and a 14-year-old fish out of Bemidji. So both of the fish were big fish. One out of Cass was a 52 and a half, cataracts in both eyes, monster head, monster head. We caught that on a walk the dog, really slow walk the dog, when I Willie.
Hmm.
And and it was a nice fish. And then the
Yep.
battle lasted 5 seconds, got in the net, took a couple of pictures, and then it took 8, 10 minutes for it to go. I mean, it just stood there, and those really old fish are like that. Um, and then you look at a
Sure.
14-year-old fish that we caught as 54 and a quarter out of Bemidji
Hmm.
that had like a 26-inch girth and was an absolute sow. Little head, and not a thing wrong with it. It was
Hmm.
gorgeous, and that thing probably could have lived another 8 or 10 years. And I just think I think the
Uh-huh.
fish out of Lake Cass and natural fisheries up by me, they hit their ceiling faster, and then they die. They probably die quicker too, because we have found fish on Bemidji that were upper 20s. So yeah, documented DNRs ran. Um,
Oh wow.
they were doing fin cuts when they were stocked, and we were able to trace that down to specific stocking years. So yeah, and that's a whole different subject, the natural versus stocked.
Sure.
But I'm fortunate to be able to pick and choose what lake I want to fish. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the cool thing, now with me being up being able
Mm-hmm.
to fish the Lake of the Woods area, I'm dealing with all natural
Mm-hmm.
fish, which is probably the first time I've ever dealt with all natural fish. Besides, well, St. Clair, they're natural too. Those are natural fish there. But that's a whole nother animal out there that with stuff going on. But no, I mean it's pretty amazing, these fisheries and everything. Minnesota's always had a wonderful fishery and stuff, and I think you're right as far as altering the baits and
Absolutely.
stuff. If you
Yeah.
are having mortality issues, then you got to change some stuff up. I think that's the best way
My phone number,
to
you can
look
text
at
me,
it.
call me,
Kevin, how
five
could
zero
somebody get a
seven
hold of you
four
if they
five
want to go
six
fishing?
9023. Send me an email, kevincochranguide@gmail.com. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Kevin Cochran Guide.
All right. Well, good deal, Kevin. Hey, I really appreciate you coming on here with me today. Good conversation. Love some of the mods that you were doing there on the baits. Guys, make sure you check out the Patreon where you can actually watch this and see some of the stuff that we're doing. I think you're really going to enjoy it. If you want to do something on Lake of the Woods sometime, or maybe this fall in Minnesota, a little south of where Kevin's fishing there in the Detroit Lake area, let me know. You can always get a hold of me through all the social media platforms, or just text me or call 606-776-6729. Kevin,
You
I
betcha.
appreciate you coming on.